Okay, we're going to start again, chapter number 5. I think your house is the most interesting one I was ever in, I said as we walked. May I come again tomorrow? Certainly, said the doctor. Come any day you like. Tomorrow I'll show you the garden and my private zoo. The larger animals are in a zoo in the garden because they are too big for the house. It must be splendid to be able to talk all the languages of the different animals, I said. Do you think I could ever learn to do it? Oh, surely, said the doctor. With practice and patience, you really ought to have Polynesia teach you. She gave me my first lessons. Who is Polynesia? She is a West African parrot. She isn't with me anymore now, said the doctor. Sadly. Is she dead? Oh, no, the doctor said. She is still living, I hope. But when we reached Africa, she seemed so glad to be back in her own country. When I had to return, I could not bear to take her away. Although she did offer to come, I left her in Africa. I have missed her. She's one of the best friends I ever had. She gave me the idea of learning animal languages and becoming an animal doctor. At that moment, we heard the sound of someone running behind us. We turned and saw Jip the dog. He started barking and whining to the doctor in a peculiar way, and then the doctor got excited and began talking and making signs to Jip. Polynesia has come back, he said, turning to me, his face shining with happiness. Imagine! Jip says she has just returned to the house. It's been 5 years since I've seen her. Excuse me a minute. He turned towards home, but the parrot, Polynesia, was flying towards us. She headed straight to the doctor's shoulder and immediately began talking a steady stream in a language I could not understand. Soon the doctor forgot all about me, my squirrel Jip, and everything else. Oh, excuse me, Stubbins, said the doctor. We must get on and see your squirrel Polynesia. This is Thomas Stubbins. The parrot nodded gravely. To my great surprise, in perfect English, she said, How do you do? I remember the night you were born. Stubbins is anxious to learn animal language, the doctor said. I was just telling him about you and the lessons you gave me. Well, said the parrot, I never could have done it if he hadn't first taught me what I was saying when I spoke English. Many parrots can talk like a person, but few understand what they're saying. As we approached my house, Jip ran in front of us. Polynesia perched on the doctor's shoulder. She chattered on in English about Africa. How is Prince Bumpo getting on? The doctor asked. I almost forgot to tell you, Polynesia said. Bumpo is in England. What on earth is he doing here? Cried the doctor. His father, the king, sent him here to a place called, Bulford, I think it was, to study lessons. Bulford? Muttered the doctor. I never heard of the place. Oh, you mean Oxford. Yes, that's the place, Oxford. I knew it had something to do with cattle. Well, well, murmured the doctor. Fancy Bumpo studying at Oxford. There were great doings in Jolly Ginky when he left, Polynesia said. He was scared to death to come. But his father said all the African kings were sending their sons abroad to study, and he must go. And how is Chi-Chi? The doctor explained to me that Chi-Chi was his pet monkey who had also stayed behind in Africa. Well, said Polynesia, Chi-Chi is not happy. He was homesick for you and the house and the garden. I was the same way myself. I couldn't settle down, even though I was glad to be in Africa. One night I made up my mind that I'd come back here and find you. I hunted up old Chi-Chi and told him. He said he didn't blame me. Africa was so very quiet after the life we led here with you. He missed your stories and our chats around the fire at night. When I left, Chi-Chi broke down and cried. He said it wasn't fair that he didn't have wings, but I'll bet he finds some way back. He's a smart lad. We reached my home. My father's shop was closed and the shutters were up, but my mother was standing at the door looking up and down the street. Good evening, Mrs. Stubbins, the doctor said. I'm sorry your son is so late. We ran into one another in the storm and I made him stay for supper while his clothes dried. I was beginning to worry about him, my mother said. Thank you, sir, for looking after him and bringing him home. And who might it be that I have the honor of addressing? She asked, looking at Polynesia on the doctor's shoulder. Oh, I'm John Dolittle. I imagine your husband will remember me. He made me some excellent boots about 4 years ago, the doctor said. The doctor has come to cure my squirrel, mother, I said. He knows all about animals. Oh, no, not all about them, Stubbins, by any means, the doctor said, smiling shyly. It is kind of you to come so far to look after his pet, my mother said. Tom is always bringing home strange creatures from the woods and fields. Is he? Said the doctor. Perhaps he will grow up to be a naturalist some day. "Won't you come in?" asked my mother. "Thank you," said the doctor. "What a charming home you have." And after wiping his huge boots carefully on the mat, the great man went into my house. Inside, my father was practicing the flute. The doctor immediately started talking about flutes and other musical instruments he played. "Won't you play us a tune?" my father asked. "Well," said the doctor, "it's been a long time, but I'd like to try. May I?" The doctor put the flute to his lips, and he was wonderful. My mother and father and even I sat still as though we were in church. "That was lovely," my mother sighed as he finished. "You are a great musician, sir," my father said. The doctor smiled. "I've nearly forgotten about the squirrel, and it is getting late," he said. "I'll show him to you." I led the doctor up the stairs to my room, and when the doctor came in, the animal sat up at once and started to chatter. Dr. Dolittle answered, and the squirrel seemed happy rather than scared. As the doctor examined him, I held a candle as the doctor tied the leg in splints made of matchsticks. "I think you will find that his leg will get better in a very short time," the doctor said. "Don't let him run about for at least 2 weeks. Keep him in the open air and cover him with dry leaves if the nights are cool. He misses his wife and family. I will have a squirrel from my garden bring him news of them. He will be all right." He went back to the parlor where the doctor played the flute for my mother and father late into the night. The next morning I was up early, even though I had gone to bed so late. I jumped out of bed, into my clothes. I could hardly wait to go see the doctor in his private zoo. I crept on tiptoe down the stairs and raced into the empty, silent street. When I got to the doctor's gate, I suddenly thought I might be too early. I peeked into the garden. No one was about. I quietly opened the gate and went inside. I turned to go down a path between some hedges. "Good morning, how early you are," I heard a voice quite close to me call. I turned and saw Polynesia sitting on top of a hedge. "Good morning, I hope I'm not too early. Is the doctor still in bed?" Polynesia laughed. "He's been up for hours. The front door is open. He's probably making breakfast or in his study. I'm waiting to see the sunrise," the parrot said. "But this awful climate. In Africa, the world will be blazing with sunlight. Here, the mist is rolling over the cabbages. I don't know why anything but frogs ever stays in England." I opened the front door and went into the kitchen, where a large kettle boiled on the fire. Bacon and eggs sat on a dish on the hearth. I found the doctor in the study, surrounded by telescopes, microscopes, and all sorts of things I did not understand, but wished I did. Hanging on the walls were pictures of animals, fish, and strange plants, and there were birds, eggs, and seashells in glass cases. The doctor was standing at the main table in his dressing gown, and at first I thought he was washing his face. He had a square glass box before him full of water, and he was holding one ear under the water while he covered the other with his hand. "Good morning, Stubbins. Nice day, don't you think?" said the doctor. "I've just been listening to the whiff-waff. Very disappointing." "Didn't you find that he has language at all?" I asked. "Oh, he has a language, but such a poor language. Only a few words like yes and no, hot and cold." "I suppose that means he hasn't very much sense if he only knows a few words," I said. "Possibly it's the kind of life he leads," said the doctor. "Whiff-waffs are very rare and solitary. They swim alone in the deepest parts of the ocean, so they don't really need to talk much. Perhaps some kind of a bigger shellfish would talk more," I suggested. "Yes," said the doctor, "I'm sure there are shellfish who are good talkers, but the biggest of them are so hard to catch. They're found in the deep parts of the sea, and they don't swim much. I do wish I could find some way to go to the bottom of the sea. I could learn a lot. I shall manage it someday. Have you had breakfast yet, Stubbins?" Polynesia came into the room while we were having breakfast and said something to the doctor in bird language. At once he put down his knife and fork and left the room. "You know, it's an awful shame," said the parrot when the doctor closed the door. "As soon as he comes home, animals all over the countryside hear of it, and every sick cat and mangy rabbit comes to see him for his advice. Now there's a big fat hare outside at the back door with a squawking baby. Can she see the doctor, please? The animals are so inconsiderate, the poor man never gets any peace." "Why don't the animals see other doctors?" I asked. "Oh, good gracious," cried the parrot scornfully. "There aren't any other animal doctors, not real doctors. Oh, of course there are those vet doctors, but they're no good. They can't understand animal language. Imagine if you went to a doctor who couldn't understand a word you said. How could he tell you to get well?" "Do you think I could even learn the language of the animals?" I asked. Well, it depends, Polynesia said. Are you clever at lessons? I don't know, I admitted, feeling ashamed. I've never been to school. My father is too poor. Well, said the parrot, from what I have seen of schoolboys, I don't think you've missed much. But are you a good noticer? Being a good noticer is terribly important. For instance, if you saw two cock starlings on an apple tree and took only one good look at them, would you be able to tell one from the other if you saw them the next day? I don't know, I said. I've never tried. Well, that, said the parrot, is what you call powers of observation. Noticing the small things about birds and animals, the way they walk, move their heads, flip their wings, or the way they sniff the air, twitch their whiskers, and wiggle their tails. You'll have to be patient, she continued. It takes a long time to say even a few words right. But if you come here often, I'll give you lessons myself. It would be good if you could learn, because then you could help the doctor. That is, if you are really interested in animals. Here's another picture, you guys. It's Stubbins talking to the bird. Can you see that? Oh, I'd love that, I cried. Do you think the doctor would let me? Certainly, as soon as you have learned something of doctoring. I'll speak to him myself. Shh, here he comes. Bring back his plate from the hearth. After breakfast, the doctor showed me the garden. It was hard to see how big it really was. Just when you thought you'd seen it all, you would turn a corner and there was a whole new part. It had everything. There were wide lawns with carved stone seats, and old flagged paths with high yew hedges that looked like narrow streets. Doorways had been made through the hedges and were shaped like vases, peacocks, and half-moons. A marble fish pond glistened with carp, water lilies, and big frogs. There were also summer houses, one filled with books. There was an outdoor fireplace where the doctor liked to fry liver and bacon and eat in the open air. A couch on wheels allowed him to sleep under any tree and listen to nightingales singing. But best of all was a tiny treehouse high in the branches of a great elm with a long rope ladder where the doctor went to look at the moon and stars through a telescope. It was a garden you could explore endlessly. There were a lot of birds in the garden. Every tree had nests. Green lizards and snakes also wiggled around the garden. Why do all these different animals come and live here? I asked. Well, I guess it's because they get the food they like and nobody worries or hurts them. And of course they know me. Are all these birds from the country around here? Mostly, the doctor said. A few rare ones visit me every year who would never come to England otherwise. But come, now I must show you the zoo. I did not think there could be anything in the garden we had not seen. But then the doctor took me by the arm in a small door in a high stone wall and pushed it open. Inside was yet another garden. I expected to see cages with animals inside them like any other zoo. Instead, there were little stone houses, each with a window and a door, and as we walked in, many of the doors opened. Animals came running out to see us. Haven't the doors any locks on them? I asked. Oh, yes, every door has a lock, he said, but in my zoo, the doors open from the inside, not from the outside. The locks are there so the animals can have privacy whenever they want. Every animal in this zoo stays because he likes it. They all look very happy and clean. What are their names? The doctor smiled. That funny-looking thing with plates on his back, nosing under that brick, is a South American armadillo. The little chap talking to him is a Canadian woodchuck. They live in the holes at the foot of the wall. The two little beasts playing in the pond are Russian minks. That reminds me, I must go and get them some herring before noon. That animal stepping out of his house is an antelope, and on the other side of the bushes, I'll show you more. Are those deer over there? I asked. Deer, said the doctor. Where do you mean? Over there. There are two of them, I said, pointing. Oh, that, said the doctor, smiling. That isn't two animals. It's one animal with two heads. It's the only two-headed animal in the world. It's called a pushmapuyu. I brought him from Africa. He's very tame. He's my night watchman for the zoo. He sleeps with one head at a time, and the other head stays awake all night. Have you any lions or tigers? No, said the doctor. It wouldn't be possible to keep them here, and I wouldn't even if I could. If I had my way, Stubbins, there wouldn't be a lion or tiger in a zoo in the world. They're never happy. They're always thinking of the big countries they left behind. You can see it in their eyes, dreaming of the big open spaces. And what are they given in exchange, the doctor asked, stopping in his walk and growing red with anger. A bear cage with iron bars, an ugly piece of dead meat thrown at them once a day, and a crowd of fools who come to stare at them. No, Stubbins, lions and tigers should never be in zoos. The doctor grew very serious, almost sad, and then suddenly he took me by the arm with his old cheerful smile. We haven't seen the butterfly houses yet, nor the aquariums. Do butterflies have a language? I'm sure they do, the doctor said, and the beetles too, but so far I haven't learned much about the insect languages. I've been so busy trying to master the shellfish. Just then Polynesia flew up. Doctor, there are 2 guinea pigs at the front door. They have run away from a boy who didn't give them the right food, and they want to know if you'll take them in. All right, said the doctor. Show them the way to the zoo. Give them the house on the left near the gate. Tell them the rules and give them a square meal. Now, Stubbins, we must go to the aquarium. I must show you the big glass seawater tank where I keep the shellfish. And that's the end for today, or just this segment. I'm going to take a break, and then I'll come back with chapter 11 to 15.